Remember Heelys? Those still a thing? I don't know if that's a good way of putting this. So we will be using the third person template project for this. And if you, in the viewport here, if you hold down right click, you can move the camera around like that. And then while still holding down the right button, you can use WASD to sort of fly around, in case you were unaware. Okay, so if we hit play now, you'll see this character here, and you can use the WASD to sort of move around this space, and you can jump using space. We're gonna have a look at how this character functions and what's going on like under the hood, and we're even gonna show like disabling some capabilities so that we can look at the actual programming. So what I'm gonna do is press Control Space, okay? And then go over to third person blueprints, and then double click on that BP third person character. And I'm actually gonna make this full screen here so that it's easier for you guys to see. So you might see this here, and you can scroll up and down to zoom in and out, and then right mouse button, hold down the right mouse button and drag to move around here. Or you might see something that looks like this. There are 3 tabs up here: the viewport, the construction script, and the event graph. The viewport is this, and then the event graph is this. The construction script, my understanding is that it's not used that often, so we're going to be working primarily in the event graph for now. So this is actually what is driving our movement, or rather this more specifically, this is actually the camera movement, or the camera rotation rather. And then this is the jumping mechanic. And to actually test that, I'm going to disconnect this right here by holding down Alt and then left clicking on it, okay? And you see this input axis move forward / backward here. We're going to go over what that actually is in a second. But for now, disconnect that Alt left click. And then you'll also see this compile here. This is actually a question mark now. When you first open this blueprint up, you'll see a check mark here. A check mark means that everything is good with it, with the blueprint. And then a question mark means you'll see this dirty needs to be recompiled. So in programming, there's this idea of compiling. Basically, every time you make an edit, you need to compile, otherwise it will not really work correctly. And what I like to do here is, you see this little drop down here with the 3 dots? Save on compile. The default is never. I like setting it to always. You might want to set it to on success only, because if your compile fails, which will happen if there's a problem with your logic, then it won't save it. But if it's on always, then it will save it even if your compile fails. I prefer always, but again, on success only, it would mean that your blueprints will be saved whenever they are successfully compiled as it says. And one other thing, you won't be able to run your game if your compile fails and the blueprint is actually being used by your game. So I like setting mine to always. Maybe never or on success only might be better for you, but I'm gonna go with always. That way I don't have to click compile and then save. I can just compile and then it'll automatically save it. So you can see now that it's a check mark now that we clicked compile, which means that this is now like updated. This is now what this now visually shows. So now if I play again, my W and S keys do not work. My up and down on the Xbox controller does not work. So hopefully that sort of hammers home the idea that yeah, this is driving our movement. And then to reconnect this, just go ahead and left click and hold here, and then as you drag out while holding down the left mouse button, you'll see this little wire here, and then hover over this little arrow or this other arrow that basically looks the same. And then when you see the check mark, just release. And now you've established this connection back. And then the same thing with the compilation. So then how is this sort of, what inputs are this? This will actually be something in the edit. If you go to this edit menu, project settings, and then you'll see this here pop up. If you search for axis, you'll see move forward slash backward, and then this, a bunch of this stuff, WS up, down, and then gamepad left thumbstick Y axis, which is referring to up and down on the left thumbstick of the controller. By the way, the PlayStation controller does not seem to work. So, and you see this little icon here indicating like which type of input it is. These are keyboard inputs. This is a controller input. And so now this move forward slash backward, you'll actually see that it matches with this name, and that's actually pretty important. So this move forward slash backward, I'm just gonna try to compress this. So this move forward slash backward here, you can see it's the same name as that. If I like change the name, then and then try to compile, you'll see a warning here because the name is actually no longer valid. So let me change that back, compile, that works again. And now we have our character back to its default. So this same sort of idea can be applied to this move right slash left here. If I go into edit project settings, axis, and we also see A, D, right, left, gamepad, left, thumbstick, x-axis, which is referring to left and right on the left thumbstick, right? And then there's also a none here. That might be a bug. Basically, don't expect Unreal to be perfect. In a lot of ways, it's not. For example, I will bring up and you don't have to copy all this, but I will bring up this here. This seems to be either a typo or it's just a, I don't think it's an abbreviation because it just doesn't seem right. And then there's some like informal stuff like slope mask, useful for stuff like snow, moss. That's not really a typo, but slop angle, that doesn't seem quite right. World direction for slop typically points down. I think that's talking about slope, right? So that's just an example of how Unreal isn't perfect, and you shouldn't necessarily expect that. So the descriptions of the slope stuff might not necessarily make sense right now, but don't worry, I might cover that in a later video. So other than that, we have the jump input, which again we can verify space A doesn't work. And as we can see in our, this would actually be in our action mapping. So there's action mappings and then there's axis mappings, the jump. So either of these, when either of these are pressed, this is going to fire off, and then this will happen, okay? So hopefully that sort of gives you a better idea of the controls, how the controls work. Again, this is the sort of thing that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But for now, let's say we figure in this is kind of boring here, just moving around, jumping, and let's say we wanted to make like a 3D platformer that was very fast paced and we wanted the character to move around very quickly. Or perhaps we want to make our world more like a Modern Warfare 2 world that's been hacked with crazy movement speeds or crazy jump heights. We can actually do that in the character movement component. And if we go and search for walk here, I already had it searched up, but if you search for walk here, then you see this max walk speed here. Set that to 3,000 or 3,999. And then if I compile, and then now you can see that the character can move much more quickly. And then there's one other thing, our jump Z velocity here, we can set that to like 2,000. And that'll just be a much higher jump. Could set it even higher if you wanted to. And then yeah, this controls the jump, sort of the jump height, or like how much force is being applied when you jump, how much force upwards is being applied when you jump, and then the max walk speed is like how fast the character will run. So I think that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching.